It's always game day in Cleveland. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. How do the Browns look on the injury front? Because they've had to go out and get some replacements on that defensive end spot, especially on the right defensive end spot. Daryl, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, they're banged up. Greg Newsome, Jalen Darden. We talked about Goodwin already. Harrison Bryant, don't know what's going on with him. Matthew Adams, Jerome Ford with a hamstring injury. I'll give you a quick update on him in a second because I was able to speak to someone in the organization there. Isaiah Thomas, Alex Wright, as we know, they had arthroscopic surgery. They brought in a defensive end this week. They then went ahead and on Thursday made official the addition of Shelby Harris, the defensive tackle, which I think is huge because now that pushes Jordan Elliott back into a reserve role. And to me, it's Shelby Harris and Dalvin Tomlinson now are your new starting defensive tackles. Because in the middle of that defensive line, I wasn't all that sold on, I should say, especially from a depth standpoint going forward. So they are banged up, no question about it. But, there is time for them to kind of get ready for the season opener and get some of these guys back on the field.
Talk about the front four now, because, I know Jordan Elliott was penciled in, but when you look at Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith on the outside, Dalvin Tomlinson, and Shelby Harris on the inside, it looks a whole lot better, especially knowing that you've got Double O sitting on the other side, and even Alex Wright too as your other backup.
Wright's out. He had arthroscopic surgery.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm sorry about that. With Isaiah Thomas also getting hurt, but I don't know how bad that arthroscopic surgery is going to keep him out. Do you?
Yeah,
sometimes you can come back quick from that.
Beginning of the season, so they're not going to be available for a little bit.
Right. Good point. All right. So what do you do? What's your fourth backup then? Jeremiah Martin?
Probably.
I'm just trying to.
Yeah. I think that when you look at defensive ends, obviously, as you mentioned, it's Garrett and it's Zadarius Smith.
Isaiah McGuire. Yeah.
And I'm going to say, Isaiah McGuire or, Chuck Wiley. They brought him in earlier this week too. So I think he goes in the mix. So,
and Daryl, I think the only reason I'm going so deep on this with you and maybe names that people we haven't really talked about and gone is because I fully expect Jim Schwartz to be moving these guys in so quick that you may see them for a play, maybe not see them for a little bit, then come back and see them again. That's what the offense or the defense is going to look like, right?
Yeah, the goal is to keep the legs fresh up front. And there's going to be a significant amount of rotation involved in that, right? So they've got to. I think that Andrew Berry did a nice job this week, bringing in some reinforcements for the defensive line, and to get Harris like at this point right now, who was pretty productive last season. I think that's a pretty significant get for Andrew Berry when you look at his production last season. 15 starts for Seattle. He had a couple of sacks, some QB hits, TFLs, broke up 4 passes at the line of scrimmage as well. It shows you how active he was up front. Now, they weren't big numbers over those 15 starts for Seattle, but they were impactful. He made some impactful plays. And let's be honest about it, Andy. That defensive front last year was not good. Outside of Myles Garrett.
No, it wasn't. And that leads me to my next point. The linebackers, Wu, Walker, Taki. Like, it's been refreshing to hear, and I keep using that word overwork on defense because I'm invigorated by what Schwartz has instilled in these guys. I don't know if we're going to see it on the field 100%, but I feel like the linebackers have a new lease on life. Like, I think they feel like they have a purpose. I think they feel like that they're going to be able to play the game the way it was taught and the way they were learned, that the linebackers will have more of an influence in the game. I'm expecting more, especially because I don't think the bar is very high for our linebackers over the last couple of years to have major impact in the game.
Yeah, I don't know what major impact, to your point, they're going to have. I just feel like that they're going.
Well, if they don't blitz, then it's just a matter of making sure that we're not giving up first downs. That's right. The major impact I'm looking for.
Yeah, because this wide 9 scheme that he runs up front with the defensive line, there's just such an onus on these guys to win their one-on-one matchups up front, right?
Exactly.
And there's less thinking. That was, I think, the biggest problem with Joe Woods last year is guys were forced to think way too much. And they suffered paralysis by analysis in the middle of plays, right? Because how I view one play is going to be completely different from how you would view a play, right? And
exactly.
So, and when you have stuff like that, and that's just natural, there's going to be miscommunication and screw-ups. And we saw that time and time again. So, listening to the players on that side of the football, like, yeah, Jim Schwartz is intense and he gets after them and things like that, but they are really legitimately excited because he's accentuating what they're doing best. Like, Denzel Ward is a man-to-man corner. He's not a cover 3 or whatever corner. He is a me versus you guy. And that's what they have in the secondary. And those guys are going to be able to play a lot of man-to-man and be responsible for either shutting down the receiver or tight end or running back that they're charged with covering, or getting them on the ground as quickly as possible.
All right, let's talk about the kicking game for a second, because I think there are fans that are a little bit unnerved about Cade York. But again, like I said last podcast, and I've been saying on the air all week, it's one kick. I think we're living in the kind of the shakes of last year, and I don't want to see this team lose a game because of a kicker. And I think that's something the fans are really harping on. I don't see a problem with bringing in another leg to camp just for the competition, but I think this is a week where Cade York, all he has to do is go out there and make his kicks and shuts everybody up, and he can move forward. And then if he does it again the next week, all the critics go away.
Yeah, I mean, the 49-yard miss in the Hall of Fame game, I get. I mean, he didn't hit it well, and it tailed on him. But here's the thing. Like, for the fans that are criticizing the Browns right now, they are putting him in practice, Andy, in simulated pressure situations. And what I mean by that is they're putting him in situations where it's a hurry-up offense. They're running the field goal unit onto the field, quote-unquote, closing seconds of a game, on the lines type of situation. And he's making all of his kicks in those situations. And these aren't like 25-yard field goals he's kicking. I mean, just the other day, he made a 44-yarder and he made a 47-yarder in those, like, literally the offense, complete a pass, race up, kill the clock, run the field goal unit on there, get the kick away. Like, he has been successful there. So I don't know, in the Browns' defense, like, I don't know what else they can do to test him or whatever, right? And I get it. Like, I totally get it. He missed, 8 field goals last year. He missed the Hall of Fame game field goal. But, like, I think that the organization is doing everything they can to put him in a position to be successful and to prepare him for pressure cooker situations. And if he's doing it in practice, right? And then, let's be honest about, when you're judging who's making your football team, practice weighs heavily. You're constantly, coaches in front office, you're dissecting that practice film time and time again. And if the guy is doing what he's supposed to be doing in practice and having that success in those quote unquote pressure situations, I don't know how much bitching and complaining you can do at the Cleveland Browns right now. Now, if the Washington game comes and he misses a couple of kicks in that, then yeah, I will hear, got to think about bringing in another leg for camp. But if he goes out Friday night against Washington and he makes his kicks, Andy, what are they supposed to do? You said, and keep in mind, they have a draft. They invested a mid-round draft pick in this guy, fourth or fifth round pick. So you're not going to bail on him that easy. And there are a lot of kickers that early in their careers, it takes them a little bit to figure it out. And unfortunately, a lot of those guys, they've had to have a change of scenery to do that. But right now, I just can't fault the Browns for sticking with the guy and giving him an opportunity to be successful. Now, all that being said, this is a put up or shut up year. And the last thing the Cleveland Browns can afford is have their kicker screw it up by missing critical kicks. So if he comes out struggling, then 100% they're going to have to make a change, because you cannot lose games because your kicker can't get it over the crossbar and through the posts.
All right. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin for our producer, Meredith Kane. Thanks for being on board with us for this edition of It's Always Game Day in Cleveland. We'll be back with a Washington recap, and we'll look ahead to the city of brotherly love when the Browns head to Philadelphia next week. That's on the next edition of It's Always Game Day in Cleveland. If you like what you're listening to, why don't you subscribe to the podcast? And you can always follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Game Day CLE. It's always Game Day in Cleveland.